Welcome to the Melanin Jelly Project Conversations, a podcast that celebrates diversity and representation in children's storytelling, entertainment, and edutainment. I am the host, Olunosen Louisa Ivaze. On this podcast, I chat with authors and creators of children's books, entertainment, and edutainment. This is also a collaboration with the Ottawa Black Book Club. Welcome, Sharnette Donacien, the author of Ada's Wash Day. Welcome to the Melanin Jelly Project podcast. My name is Olunosen Louisa Ivaze. I started this podcast to celebrate diversity and representation in children's storytelling. So, Sharnette, tell me about yourself and what inspired you to write this lovely book.
Sure. Where do I begin? I guess I would say that I'm an international, and I say that because I was actually born in Saint Lucia, which is a small Caribbean island. Okay. When I was 9, I moved with my family to the UK, and that's where I grew up. I went to secondary school, I attended university, and that's where I had a lot of my firsts. I started working, that's where I met my husband, and then 10 years ago, we actually moved to the Netherlands. So I followed my husband. He was on a work contract, and then it was supposed to be for 1 to 2 years, but 10 years later, we were still there. Ooh. And then most recently, our family moved to New York. So I am now living in New York with my family. So that's a little bit about me. I guess you can say I'm an international. I'm used to working with people from different cultures, and I love learning and meeting new people, and traveling and doing those sort of things. In my spare time, I really like cooking, but I also like eating. So that can also be a bit of a problem. What inspired me to write this book? So I had my first daughter, Ada, in 2013. And growing up in the Netherlands, particularly in the area where we were from, we didn't have many friends and we didn't have any family. So for Adalia, a lot of how she learned how to be and learning was actually just from us, from myself and my husband. I mean, obviously there was some influence when my mum would visit or my sister would visit, but for her, representation of strong Black women and other Black girls was very limited for her in the space that we were. And as she got older and she started going to school, she had loads more questions about herself, her identity, the way she looks, stemming from, she was actually born in the Netherlands, but she wasn't Dutch. So even though she was born there, she's part of the culture, she speaks Dutch, she wasn't recognized as Dutch. So that's where the bigger questions about who am I, where am I from? And then when you looked at her classmates in school, no one else looked like her. So she's always generally the only Black girl in a lot of spaces, whether when she played field hockey, swimming lessons, or at school, she was always the only one. And being the only one sometimes, especially for a young girl, it can feel a little bit isolating and lonely. And particularly when you look out and you see all the other girls who are really long, straight hair, white girls or biracial girls, with nice, really lovely, flowy, curly hair. But then she kept thinking, well, why don't I look like that? Is my hair lovely? Do I have nice hair? And I think that got compounded with sometimes she's being bullied because of her hair or because of the way she looks, stemming from, I guess, from if you're around 5-6 years old, it's like a mixture of curiosity, but also learned behavior from home, from what you're listening, or from society in general. So really, this book was an affirmation for her to let her know that she is beautiful. And when we looked at books around that time, I think when I wrote this was 2017, 2018, there weren't many books which had like a Black girl as the central protagonist in a children's book that I could see. So there just weren't many to choose from. So I thought, okay, I'm going to write something just for her, to affirm her and her identity, to affirm our relationship, and just to kind of build on that bond. And I really felt that there would be other girls who needed a book like this.
Oh, lovely story. Yeah. When the book came, I went, Ada's Wash Day. Wash Day. What could it be about? And then I started to read it and I went, oh, now I see.
Yeah.
I'm very happy that you sent me this book. Thank you for your generosity for sending a copy because,
Thank you.
Because you had to post it and all of that. But, when I started it and I got to this part where she said, it's clear here, she wants to go out with her dad and Gabby, with Papa and Gabby, but her mom says it's wash day and she says, it's not fair, I hate wash day, it takes so long. I just smile because what I've realized in our cultures is that for the longest time, and I'm grateful now that we are beginning to embrace our hair in its natural form. For the longest, I know I had kinky hair when I was growing up. And my mom used to have those plastic combs. And as a child, when she would try to comb out the hair, sometimes it would break the bristles of the comb. So she had to get a wooden comb. She got a wooden comb at a point. Then I will never forget the day she blew out my hair. Put in the relaxer, blew it out, and I put in the comb, and everything just went.
And it went through.
Yeah, it just went through, so smoothly. So I think through the years, we've not been taught how to manage and appreciate our hair in its natural form. But now that is coming back. For me, it's still a work in progress, because I remember I went natural at one time, then I got tired, I relaxed the hair. Then I got tired, I went back again, got tired, I blew out the hair, and I went at a point, I just want to texturize the hair. But it's altering its natural form.
Yeah.
So now I've gone back to leaving my hair in its natural form. And the other day I was just thinking, I said, you know what, when I go to the salon, I'm going to ask them to trim off the tips. Texturize tips. Yeah. How important do you think it is for kids to see themselves and their experiences represented in books, in children's books? Because this one talks about a child's experience with black hair, with kinky hair. And I love what the illustrator did. I love that the hair looks texturized. You can see the texture in the illustration. It's not just a regular illustration. You can see the texture in the illustration. How important do you think it is for children to open books and see kids who look like them going through similar experiences?
It is so, so important. And I'm glad you highlighted this about the book, because when we were developing the character of Ada and how she would look, I've been working with an illustrator, fantastic illustrator called Shireen Saeed, and she's from Egypt. So the first iteration of Ada actually was completely not what I expected. It was more of a representation of probably what Shireen and her culture and little girls would look like. So I was very intentional, going back, not to criticize, but when you're doing things, you do it from your perspective, of course. So then I realized that I had to be very clear about the message and the identity of the girl that I wanted to present in this book. I was very clear. I want her to be brown skinned. I want her to look, to look black. Adalia is a mixture of Caribbean and African. My husband is from Gabon. So for her, she has these very clear identities that I wanted to be seen in this book. I also wanted it to represent her and her hair texture and hair, because her hair is, very 4C type hair, very, very tight curls, kinky, curly, coily, but also at the same time, very soft, very light. I really wanted that to be seen in this book, so that when she opens the book, she can instantly say, oh my gosh, this looks like me. And this is the feedback that I've gotten so many times from other little girls who open the book and said, this girl looks like me. And these are girls who traditionally, when we think about, black representation in children's literature, the girls would not look like them. The girls wouldn't have kind of, the hair that what's the word? With shrinkage,
Okay.
That was very important for me to show that 4C hair has that shrinkage. So when it's out, it's not going to be this big volume of curls. It's going to be this tight, compact look. But then the most important thing I wanted to get across as well is the versatility of our hair in this book, because you can have it out curly, you can have it in cornrows and twists. There's so many things that you can do. So I really wanted to show that experience and let girls know that, yes, this is about you. And I think one more thing, sorry to go on, but what was important for me about this book is just showing joy, just showing regular experiences. Because I've always felt, looking at some children's books, particularly about black, there was a lot of hurt, a lot of pain, a lot of going through negativity. But I wanted to flip this book on its head and just be about, simple, normal, everyday experiences that black girls go through and can identify with. And something as simple as wash day with a parent or a caregiver is something I think that all black girls can identify, and boys. Because boys with longer hair also have to go through this process with their caregivers. So this was very, very important for me to show that normality within a family structure, within a black family structure.
Okay. And I like the mother-daughter relationship. I like the fact that the mom, even though when the story started, her hair looked straight, I like that she ran water through it and
Yes.
shrank. So how important do you think it is to reflect mother-daughter relationships in Black families? Because there's the general assumption that most of the time, oh, you know what, Black families, they see that no dad there, or maybe the mom is on drugs and the child is being raised by a grandparent. How important do you think it is to reflect family ties, mother-daughter, father-daughter, or father-son, mother-son? How important do you think it is to show these relationships in children's books?
That's a fantastic question, and I'm really glad you picked up on that, because the central theme of this book is actually that mother-daughter bonding relationship. And what I think is so wonderful about Wash Day with my daughter is that it really gives us a chance to bond over things that we may not have the time to, or not be able to really properly express if, say, my husband is around or my son is around. So we really use that time, we slow things down. You know, my phone is away, it's just me and her connecting. She gets a chance to ask all about questions about her hair, her friends, her body. I mean, she's now going to be 10 years old, so she's going through a lot of changes. And this is such a good moment for us to ask questions, for her to ask questions, for me to answer, but also for me to ask questions. You know, how are you? What do you want? How was your week? How was your day? What do you dream about? What do you think about? And I think it's so important to show that. And that's why the book itself is a little bit stretched, you know, just little conversations. But this is really how I got her to love Wash Days. Because at first she hated Wash Days. It's long. She didn't like going through the process, you know, and I think you mentioned it as well, you know, the comb breaking. Exactly. The comb breaking in her hair. We've had these experiences, or it's just not fun, it's painful. But there's so many things that's out of that. And I think if I go back to what you said before, back in the day when we were getting our hair, sometimes it was traumatic because it was always a bit rushed, or you have to do this and you're kind of pulling and stretching.
The hot comb that would burn your ear. You know, most of the time your mother would say, hold your ear, or the father will say, hold your ear. Then you have Vaseline quickly put over the blunt of the ear. Yes.
But I think part of that is because, one, we didn't have the products readily available to us in the shops. Now you go into a lot of shops, there's a lot of natural products directly for Black hair and created for and by us. And I think if I look back to maybe 20, 30 years ago, we didn't have that. Like you said, we were using Vaseline or the jam or the blue thing in your hair, it's unthinkable to think that we would use that now. But when I think now, the reason why she also gets a chance to love Wash Days is because I've educated myself about our hair. I've educated myself with the steps to go through, like, you know, you can't detangle dry hair. You can't detangle horsey hair with dry hair or any hair. So, you know, learning how to use water as a base to like start to moisturize, getting the right products, you know, using Black hair care products with the type of things that we need, you know, shea butter, all that kind of stuff, almond milk, avocado in our hair. So now that we've gone through and getting the right products, the right tools, Wash Days can be fun because it's not painful. It takes long, yes, but it doesn't take as long as before. But also you can create a multitude of hairstyles that would look really great. And then for me, in terms of reflecting what I'm trying to teach her, to love her natural hair, to love her identity, love herself. I mean, today, yes, I've got my hair blowed out, but I make it a conscious decision to wear my hair in its natural state, in its natural form more often, because I can't go around telling her, oh, you know, love your hair, wear your hair how it is, and I'm always having my hair straight. And I found, particularly when I was working, so in the corporate world, this would be like every day for me. I think for a long time, I even forgot what my natural hair looked like, because every week or every 10 days, I'm getting it blow dry to go to work. And that's the second discussion in itself, right? About whether or not Black hair is professional or not. And these were things we had to deal with, you know, 20 odd years ago. But now with people feeling empowered, people are really reclaiming their space and their identity. We can go to work, we can go to school and do whatever we want and wear our hair exactly how we want. So that was something I thought it was really important to bring out to that discussion within this book.
Yeah, because, you know, I was going to ask you before you said that, the politics of Black hair. Why do you think Black hair is political? I remember back in the day when I was job hunting and people said to me, oh, Louisa, maybe the reason you're having issues finding a job is because you wear braids a lot. So I'm a braids girl. I love braids girl. Even if I don't have on my braids, if I have on wigs, it will be a braided wig.
Yeah.
I have extensions, the straight ones, but I don't, there's just something, it doesn't, for me, it's not me. So I'm a braid. And they'll tell you that straight hair is more accepted. That is traditional hair. And I remember I was listening to, I think it was Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie that was speaking, and she was saying that if Michelle Obama had hair in its natural state, there was something she said. Now, remember, she made a statement about Michelle Obama having to straighten her hair.
Yeah, to be accepted.
To be accepted at that time. Because since she left office, I mean, Michelle is rocking braids. She's rocking her hair in its natural state.
And Michelle herself identified that. I think, I can't remember who she was having the interview with, but she herself said that for her, straightening her hair then was, I don't know, becoming more acceptable to the rest of America. But now that she's not, constrained within the confines of what is acceptable or professional, yeah, she's rocking her braids, she's rocking her wigs, and she's even dressing differently and, really like coming out there out of her shell. So there is a big pressure on Black women to really always be thinking about our hair. I mean, how can something that grows out of our head be so politicized? And I think the important step, and I see a lot of people are doing this now, is going back to the beginning and thinking, when, why, how did it become politicized? And it's all about politicizing our bodies in general. Because if you think, we were at some point chattels to people. So for them, being able to politicize your body, how you should look, what you should wear, whether you can show your natural hair in public, having to wear a head wrap, having to shave your hair, or not being allowed to do certain things. So, that politicization of Black hair is something that's always been ongoing. And yes, it's been ongoing now even. Because if we look at schools, for example, and their policies on, what's not professional at school, but how you turn up to school and school codes and school guidance, there is still, frankly, a lot of rules and regulations about what Black boys and girls can do to their hair. And it's amazing that, companies, not companies, but I guess, what's the word? You can edit that one. But it's amazing with movements like the Crown Act in the US and the Halo Code in the UK, the step that they're taking to push legislation to basically make it something for discrimination. So to make it in legislation that you cannot discriminate against Black women or men or boys or girls in respect of their hair. So I think this is a nice time to have these conversations about your hair and depoliticizing our hair.
Yeah, so because I write books too. So I write mainly for adults, then recently started writing for children. So in the last 2 years, I've written for kids. And I was just, Louisa, what do you, I'm not a children's writer, but what kind of children's stories can I tell? And I thought that, one, I'm African, I'm Nigerian. Two, I love history. Then I thought, okay, Louisa, why not tell a story about children's hair? Because when I saw this book, I liked the take on this. But me, I couldn't have written this kind of book because I'm not that kind of author. I write for adults. I could sit down, pen out an adult story. But for children, I try to think of, okay, a child's voice. Like I like how you step by step, detangle, shampoo, all of that. So I decided I'm going to show you my book because now since we're talking about hair,
yes,
I always tell people, especially if they have, it doesn't matter daughters or sons, but I always tell people, so this is my book. It's called
lovely. Oh, amazing.
So, in African cultures, our hair is regarded as your crowning glory. Those loved ones in many West African cultures, as a sign of respect and honor, you shave your head. Because they believe that the hair is at the top, so is the closest part to the spirits. So that is the greatest honor you can show anybody. So I was thinking, okay, if I was going to teach children about hair, what kind of story should I be telling them? And I decided to go, so this book is called Crowning Glory, The History of African Hair Tradition. So what I did was I went back in time.
Oh, I love that.
So these are Bantu knots to talk about the origin of certain hairstyles and how they are an inspiration for many of the hairstyles we have around the world today. So this
Yes.
is the Prince Oshu in Yoruba culture, who was believed to have been the first hairdresser. So
Yeah.
that's that's the comb and that's the golden mirror. And these are hairstyles that were once, or that also acted as a means of communication, escape routes during slavery.
Yeah.
And I went ahead also to explain that back in the day, you could tell the family people belonged to simply by their hairstyles.
By their hair, yes,
The royal
exactly.
wives of Edo. This is the shuku style from the Yoruba culture.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also that, you know what? There's a lot about hair. When people
That's amazing.
Yes, when people were taken away as slaves, their hair was shaved because that was a way of, I think, of stripping them of their culture. Yes, so those kind of things. So that was why I decided, you know what, Louisa, write this book. But so what are some of the challenges you think authors, diverse authors like us, experience when trying to tell authentic stories? What are some of the challenges?
That's a really good question. And I think one of the major challenges or barriers, or maybe even hurdles, is the publishing industry as a whole. Because when you look at a lot of the books that have been published for us and by us, they tend to be coming from the self-published or independently published route. So that's already a challenge in itself, because if you're not traditionally published, you just have you have less entrance into the market, right? You're not going to end up automatically in bookstores all over the world. You don't have the budget to market on that level. You don't automatically get into schools, into libraries, etc. So that's already a hurdle, traditional versus self-publishing. Secondly, I think it's reaching your targeted person. So who is that end customer? Yes, the book is probably got protagonists that are Black and talking about experiences from a Black viewpoint, but that doesn't mean that it can't be consumed by other people and other cultures. Because if you look back, for years, we've been consuming other people's cultures, other people's identities, and we're still reading books. So I think it's overcoming that kind of, maybe not stigma, but challenge of people just putting you in that box. So a Black author, so only for Black kids. Which is okay. Obviously, we're targeting our books for that specific individual and specific customer, but it doesn't mean that it can't be consumed globally by others. Yes. And I would say fear, I think, is probably the third. So it's that fear that no one's going to buy your book, who wants to listen to my story, particularly if it's coming from an own voice person. So you're thinking, oh, this is very specific subject. I don't know if anyone's going to buy that. And then most people who do have that story to tell, they don't end up sharing it for that fear that they think no one is interested. So I think for me, these are the top three challenges for authors like us.
Okay. And so this book, was it self-published? Did you self-publish this book?
It was a hybrid publishing. Conscious Dreams Publishing. It's a small independent UK publisher, which is owned and developed by a Black woman called Dani. And I reached out to her for a number of reasons. One, because she was Black. So I felt that she would understand this story. Before I found Dani, I went down the traditional publishing route and I submitted my books, I think 30, 40. And imagine getting 2 rejections, but then hearing nothing at all. But again...
yes, me too.
Yeah, welcome to the club. At that point, you just think, oh, well, my story doesn't matter, or maybe it's not as good as I thought it was. So then I sat on it for a couple of years because I thought no one wanted to read my story, and I didn't think it was a good enough story. And then I accidentally fell across Dani, and then I reached out to her, and she was like, oh my God, this is a great story. We need to make sure this book happens. So that's why I was very keen to have the support of someone like her, but also to help with editing, to help with the layering of the text and the typesetting, and helping me to actually physically get the book together on Amazon, on Ingram Sparks, etc. So it's a bit of a hybrid, because I worked with the illustrator myself directly. So really it was kind of me and the illustrator working and going through this process, which I think took 9 months. And that's one thing I didn't realize, that if you want to produce something that, well, I'm going to be proud of, I'm going to have to take it step by step by step. And I was really proud and really excited to work with the illustrator on each spread, really thinking, what's the core message on this page? What is it that we're trying to get across here? and then going back and thinking, she's done such an amazing job. I can actually get rid of text because I don't need to describe these things because it's so eloquently illustrated there. So a hybrid method.
Okay, so explain to us, because for listeners might be wondering what a hybrid method is and how it works. So can you talk us through step by step? How does a hybrid method work? Who does the funding? How is the funding split? Is it a 60-40? Is it a 50-50? How are the royalties split? Kindly talk.
Okay. So my specific situation, I own all the rights to my book. So all the royalties go to myself. My publisher, she literally helped me in editing the manuscript and finding the right typesetter to put. So once we finished with the illustrations, then to actually put all the words on the page, uploading to Ingram Spark, setting up my accounts, and then helping me with a little bit of marketing at the end. But everything else was myself. So if I start at the beginning for someone who's thinking about doing this process, so the beginning for me was, okay, I have the story I want to tell, I'm going to write. And actually this book took me, the first iteration took me maybe 3 hours to write. I did it all in one sitting. And then I sent it to a trusted friend of mine who had published a book, self-published the year before. And I said, hey, can you read this for me, see what you like? And he gave me some feedback. And then I sent it to some more friends. I thought, oh, I really like this story. And I got feedback from all these other people. So I think I left it for maybe 2 months, and then I went back and I changed it a little bit, cropped it, reduced it, changed the voice and the perspective. And then I did the submissions and then, all the rejections. And then once I'd once I found Conscious Dreams Publishing, then I reached out to an illustrator. And that's another process in itself. So you really have to find an illustrator that the style that you like, the cost that's affordable for you. So I paid for my own illustrator myself. I really loved her style and her energy and her vibrancy and her detail. It looks absolutely fantastic. So once we finished with the illustrations process, which took about maybe 6 months, then we went back to the publisher, and then again we edited again based on the illustrations. What can we get rid of? And then she found the typesetter to do the work, and then putting it all together, formatting it correctly for KDP, which is Amazon's online publishing, and also for Ingram Spark. Now I decided to go first with Ingram Spark so I can get the worldwide distribution, and then once it was up and running for like 3 weeks, then I separately uploaded it on Amazon. And I would highly recommend anyone who's doing that process to do it in that order. Because if you do publish via Ingram Sparks, your libraries can end up your books can end up in libraries, they can end up in bookstores, and the quality is what they're looking for. So the paper quality is fantastic, the printing quality is fantastic on Ingram Sparks. Now Amazon has a completely different model. You have quick access, people can find it. You also have the ability to see the reviews, which really helps other customers to understand why people are loving your book. But the quality of the paper and the printing is less than that of Ingram Sparks. So it's kind of a toss-up in some way. In a highly idealized world, I would love to have the paper quality, the printing quality of Ingram Sparks, but the color quality of Amazon. So these are just some things for you to think about. And then once my book was uploaded and it was all set up, then it's my publisher helped me to do the initial early stage marketing, and then it's me all the way. And then I get all the royalties and all the stress that goes along with it.
Okay, so did you have to split costs with the publisher, or you paid a lump sum?
I paid everything myself. I paid for my illustrator myself, and I also paid my publisher for her support and the mentoring that goes with that, and also for the typesetter and uploading all the work. Yeah.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. In regards to self-publishing, you just spoke about using Ingram Spark first before. I usually use Amazon first before I use Ingram Spark. The reason why I do that sometimes is because the cost. The cost. So sometimes I wait till because at least every 2 months they do this promos where they allow you upload your books for free. Yeah, Ingram Spark does that. What I like about Ingram Spark is the wide distribution, and even my books, because I have book 1 and 2. This one is the African Safari, an introduction to Africa's indigenous animals.
Yeah. Nice.
Kids don't know that kangaroos and tigers are not indigenous to Africa, to the continent. They don't know. So what I did first was I used KDP, Amazon to get it out there. Then I waited till I got a promo, and then I uploaded. But even when I needed to make corrections, anyway, I ended up paying for that.
Yeah.
I find Ingram Spark expensive in terms of pricing.
Yeah.
In terms of pricing, the first time I put up the first book, I wasn't too sure. So my margin was very little. My profit from each book was less than $1. Yes, it was less than $1 because of the way I set it up, because I thought if anybody is buying, bookstores are buying 55% off, With the second one, I was more intentional and more strategic.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
To at least make sure that I get something tangible. So that's the difference. Yeah. In terms of quality, yes, Ingram Spark, I like the quality, but sometimes what I like about Amazon is the colors of the illustration seem
more vibrant.
Yes,
exactly.
More vibrant. Yeah. Okay. So how do you think that we as diverse authors can come together to support each other? How do you think we can support each other by putting each other's voices out there? How do you think we can do that?
I think exactly like what you're doing now, supporting each other, highlighting other people's work, really spotlighting their work, and buying their work. That's like what I think one of the biggest things, because a lot of the times we can, social media is fantastic. Spotlight them, highlight them, follow them, share their work with friends, but also definitely buy their work. And then, do you know what? Go that one step further, please, on Amazon and write a review.
Write a review. What are some tips you can give authors who want to tell authentic stories? Like, look at I like the way you wrote this story. I don't know if I can write a story like this, the step-by-step, washing, shampooing, all of that. Her reluctance to get her hair washed because she complained about the discomfort, detangling, all those things, and then the connection with her mother. What are some tips you can give authors, aspiring authors who want to write this kind of authentic stories about experiences of multicultural children?
Yes, that's a great question. Firstly, I would say the first thing I would say is really know why. So I think the why is the biggest thing. If you have a very clear why you're writing that book, it's going to come through for your story, it's going to come through in your writing. And then we go to who. Who is this book for? Is it for a specific group, a micro group? Is it mainly for like girls or boys? Is it for a specific region? Who is your main customer? Okay. And then really take the time to sit down and just write. I mean, everyone has their different processes, but sometimes you just need to get things on a page, and that's okay. Just get it all out, get your ideas out, because you can always go back and adjust, amend, change, whatever. But the first step is to just get started. And just get it down. Even if you do it in 5 minutes, even if you have a rough outline, do it that way. Like I said, my process, I had the idea for a while because I was always telling my kids stories. I've always been a storyteller. So I make up stories on the spot for them to put them to bed. When I was younger, I'd always write stories with my sister, or do screenplays and we'd act them out, or I'd write songs, those kind of things. I've always been writing. So that is really your passion, something you really want to do, and you really feel you have a story. Get there and write it. But the next part is the bit I think that people miss. Share it with a couple of people. Because unfortunately, we'll just be self-fulfilling and reading and thinking, oh, this is amazing, this is great. But you need that outside perspective just to give you a different viewpoint and to see where you might have missed, or there are holes in your story, or it doesn't make sense, or it's not realistic. So share it with some trusted friends, maybe your friend, your mother, or your husband, your wife, whoever. Share it with a few people, and then the next bit, take on that feedback. Don't take it personally. Really step out of yourself, put your ego to one side, and really listen to their feedback, and then try to incorporate their feedback within the story where applicable. And then once you have that, reach out to even more people, and again, get people to really give you that feedback. Because if you're particularly writing about real life experiences or experiences from the point of view of a child, who best to kind of give you feedback than someone who either has children and reads books to their children every night, or the children themselves. And then once you've done that, find some books within the same genre, I would say. Read those books. feel like, what's the tone like? What does it sound like? What's the reading level like? If you're writing a book for, say, 0 to 3 or 3 to 6, it's going to be very different, the language that you're going to use. The number of words, the complexity of the words is going to be very different. And then, which is so important in children's books, the visual, the illustrations. That's actually one of the biggest things in children's books, not the words. The illustrations are what matters. So look at those books in that genre and think, how are they showing these stories? What tone are they using? How are they making it a little bit more interesting? So for example, my first page is a double page spread. Mm-hmm. And I really like that to set the tone for the family, set the tone for the environment. And I thought it was so important for me that they also saw Papa and Gabby in the background. So when we spoke earlier about modeling the Black family, I want it to be seen that there is a family here with a structure. And then I could have just done another double spread, but the story demanded something else. So really think about how your thing is going to play out in the illustrations. So make use of full page spreads, half spreads, spots, which are these where you have 2 images side by side. And yeah, this one kind of spreads also kind of like a hybrid one. Just make it quite interesting from different perspectives. Think about how you're telling the story. So here I was talking about the steps, which you discussed earlier. So shampoo, condition, detangle. How can we show that? It's a 3-stage step. So 1, 2, 3. Just really think and think, critically about what you're doing, I would say. And if you have got the time, mock it up for yourself. If you're good at drawing by hand, do that. But I used Canva actually when I was sending my own rough mock-ups to my illustrator. I would use Canva to just play it out and use the images and the graphics and say, this is kind of the vibe I want here. Ada in the tub here with her hands, her mum looking on proudly, or Ada's looking a bit, So really just taking that time and not rushing the process. And then I think if you do all those things, then it should turn out to be a good project.
I think this is my favorite page. This is my favorite page.
Yeah, I wanted to show the versatility of the hair.
The versatility of the hair. And I still, like I said, I love the fact, I can almost feel her hair.
Feel the hair, yeah.
I almost feel it. Yeah. So was she expensive, the illustrator?
I wouldn't say she. I think it's all relative. Okay. I think it's a good value that I'm getting. It's maybe on the top end because I really wanted that texture, that feeling, that care. So like I said, it took us 6 months, almost 6 months to illustrate the whole book. So one spread, which is 2 pages in the book, would take something like 2 weeks or 3 weeks, depending on how complicated it is. And there are revisions that go through and we talk because she takes the time. So it really depends on what you want. I really wanted to invest in it. This is like my 3rd baby almost. I wanted a 3rd baby, but I didn't physically want to go through the whole process. So this was like birthing my 3rd baby. I really wanted to take the time, nurture it and grow it. And because it was also my first book, I really wanted to go through the steps to make sure I didn't make any mistakes. And that's another reason I reached out to Danny at Constant Stream Publishing, because I wanted someone who has done it before, so I don't make those mistakes of like pricing my book wrong or forgetting all the bits. And I really wanted it to look like a book. So, like a book that you see. So we have like our title pages, for example, these end pages that I thought was really cute that I decided to add in. Just to give it that feel of like a book that you would see in a bookshop. So those were things that we really kind of I worked on with my illustrator, which I'm really proud of. Okay. So firstly, I will add, we have a proper contract. So I was very clear to set up a contract with her so everyone knows what their responsibilities are. We had deadlines and we also had like some additions. So there was a price, there was how much to pay for the deposit, by when the second demand would be for, how many revisions are allowable for the front cover, for example, revisions per spread, and the total number of spreads in total. So from the beginning, it was very clear what her responsibilities were and what mine were as well. So, things like writing in timely response to emails, like 3 days, turnaround from when I send her each spread and my own mock-up and things, then we're saying the first draft within a week. You know, I made sure it was very, very detailed. And I know not everyone goes down this path.
Give us tips on working effectively with an illustrator. So
absolutely. Yes, so I would say the first thing is to pick the right illustrator, and pick that illustrator based on your budget, their style, and their availability. So be very clear when you need the work done by, and then make sure you clarify whether they can actually deliver on that work. So some people might just say, yes, I have time, and take it on, and then you might not hear from them in 6 to 9 months. So be very, very clear. And what I did with my illustrator is I set out a contract. And within that contract, you know, we identified who the parties were, so me, the illustrator. We worked out exactly how many spreads were required, exactly the price for the full project, the number of revisions that would be allowed per spread. In my case, I think it was 2 or 3 revisions. Whether or not the front and the back cover was also included in the budget, and the number of revisions for the front and the back cover. We also identified a separate cost for the additional parts of the book that I wanted to include, which was like title pages, end pages, and then the other title page. So have a think about the total number of pages for your book, not just for the story itself, but then to make it a complete book. What else did we think about? Oh yes, deadlines. Deadlines in terms of, okay, halfway, we want to be done within, 2 months, the end of the project by, let's say, 20th of September, give a very specific date. Then we had rules of communicating with each other by email. So we never did FaceTime, we never called, everything was done by email. And I would highly recommend having email as your traffic, because then you can have the whole conversation. So if there's any disputes, then you have evidence, right? On both sides. So this is also for illustrators as well. We also communicated how long it would take the first draft, for example, and then from that first draft, how long the final product would be. So in any case, it could be anything from 3 days to a week or 2 weeks, depending on how you think or how complex you want your illustrations to be. But it's very important to have that clarity, because sometimes if you send something, if you want it back in 2 days, it's not realistic. It's not realistic at all for an illustrator. And that's when I think you get friction in the illustrator and writer relationship. And then on the other side, you send something, you don't hear back from them for a month. That, causes delays. It kind of prolongs the whole project for yourself. So really, really identify those strict communications and those deadlines, etc. Also put in writing exactly what the total amount will be, how it will be paid, and to whom. And I know that sounds quite silly, but it's very clear. If it's been denominated in pounds, in euros, in US dollars, be very clear, because it will make a big difference at the end. If you're thinking you're paying them in, yen, but it's actually in US dollars, that's going to be very different for your total cost. Also think, how are you going to pay them? Is it by bank transfer, by PayPal, by Venmo? Like, what is that payment? Also be very clear that they also signed the contract at the end, so that they're also adhering to those specific terms. I got my template from a lawyer. Just a general template. I think it cost me like 50 euros or something like that. But you can go on websites and just find a general contract, which includes some specific points on copywriting and ownership for the country that you're in. So that's the important thing here, because when illustrators do their work, it is considered art. But you have to consider who owns the rights to that art. Also make sure you specify that and outline that very clearly in the contract. So in this situation, all the ownership of all the art passes to myself. In some cases, the illustrator might own all the art. So although you can publish it in this book, potentially you wouldn't be able to use it for other things. So for example, where you've got your dolls, I might not be able to use the likeness for dolls or for additional merchandise that I may or may not produce. So that's very, very important. I know in some situations I paid my illustrator in full directly, but in some situations, say if you're short if you have a tight budget, you could get into a profit sharing agreement with your illustrator based on sales of the book, and you would have to negotiate that yourself. But again, make sure that's explicit within the contract. So these are the areas that I would say are really handy. And actually last year, because I went through this process and I took my time, I actually started preparing a digital online course for other would-be independent and self-published authors, so that they can know the steps that I took, but also have the templates that I use for specific things, like my illustrated template, giving you examples, letting you know why they're included, all these sort of things, and giving you templates to contact bookshops, libraries, schools, podcast hosts, all these sorts of things. And then just giving you like a template for everything, even the storyboarding, how to lay it out, what you need to think about, and giving you examples. So it should have been out last year, but we were moving to the US, so I put all that on hold. But hopefully it should be released by September this year, my online course.
Okay, so that's great. So you have that online, and I believe it's a premium online course, right?
Yes, it is, yeah.
Okay, great.
It's not free. And the reason it's not free is because I have gone through the painful process. This is something that I have done, I've learned. And I've thought about what's important. I mean, it will be affordable. So I'm thinking anywhere between either $79 to $129. But then you'll have access to all the stuff. And will be an option for a one-on-one call if you do the online course at a discounted rate than my typical rate. I'm actually a leadership and development coach and consultant. So that's what I do for my day job, you would say. So it's in my process helping people go from A to B or A to Z or wherever you need to go. So I just thought, I'm really good at that. I take people up through their careers doing this. So I can do the same with this because it's a need. When I first published this book, I think about 50, 60 people reached out to me and was like, how did you do it? I really want to know this. It's great. And that's when my aha moment was like, oh, people actually really want to know this. People don't know this. So that's why I did it.
Yeah, it makes, thank you for sharing this. It makes a lot of sense.
If we go back to your question, how can we support other authors who want to do the same? So this is it. It's really providing that space where you can provide support and mentoring. And when people hear mentoring, they automatically think free, and that's not necessarily the case. In some cases, I'm happy to give advice, but when it goes into that step where you really want me to kind of feed my knowledge, feed into you over hours and hours, then there comes a point where you have to respect my time, respect my knowledge, and actually pay for it. Because, I also have rent to pay.
What I realize is that they don't think of that. They think that it's, because for me, I didn't go to any, writing has always come naturally to me. And in primary school, secondary school, I would write stories and I would share with my friends.
Yes.
So people just assume, oh, you know what, because it comes easily and naturally to Louisa, it means I can do it for free. But no. So I would like to ask, thank you so much. So what do you hope for the future of this book? Where would you like to see this book go? Would you like is it going to be a series, or, because I saw you called your little, where is it?
Little Big Stories. Yeah, it's the name of my business. Yeah.
So
this is actually a series. Ada's Wash Day is the first in the series of the Ada books. I've actually already written 6 stories. So I'm undecided which one to publish next. Within the Ada series. And this next one's one of them, Ada's Violin, Ada Learns to Swim. I haven't thought about a title yet, but one where she kind of breaks through one of her challenges, which is dancing in front of an audience. And she does that. So my next book is actually hopefully coming out in June, July. And it's the first of a series, but this one is based on my son. So when I published this book, my son was very, very jealous. He was like, oh, what about me? But I was like, well, Ada's the firstborn. So the first book has to be about Ada. So this one is actually about Gabby, my son Gabby, and Papa also you'll see in this book as well. And it's about, I'm working on the name at the moment. It's about his first day at a new school. So it's really taking through that process where the family is supporting him on his big day. We're all walking him to school, and then we go through the process of him being introduced to the school, introduced to the class, and in the background playing out to that is one, Mama's anxiety for letting her baby go to school, which is a big thing, I think, for a lot of parents. But then also the undertone of that was our own experience for when our son transitioned to a new school in the Netherlands based on his real negative experiences at his old school. And we can get into that on another one. But so it's really following through and looking at how Gabby adjusts and deals with that pressure and that anxiety of being in a new space. And then when we think about the background to that, my son has a sensory processing disorder. So some things for him at that age particularly, he wasn't really able to articulate well his concerns, his feelings, his thoughts. So that sort of anxiety and nerves for him used to play out in different ways. Sometimes it was, reinforced negatively with like either biting or hitting, but in other ways it's like screaming or shouting or really going into a shell. And that's something that also plays out into this book. So when we talk about representation of children, particularly Black children in children's literature, I was really keen to do a separate series so that we can see a different type of child, a child that is neurodivergent, but also a Black boy, but also with, having this neurodivergence, but just also experiencing normal things with his family, going to school and experiencing life and dealing with anxiety, but also twisting that and how he overcomes that by just being himself and being in a loving space where he's free to be himself. That was the critical thing for me that comes across in the next book.
Oh, that's fantastic. Please, when that book is ready, send me a copy and I'll bring you back here, because I really enjoy chatting with you. Where can people find your books to buy? What are your social media handles, your website? Where can people find this book to buy?
Okay, to buy at the moment, I've locked my shop on my website because I've moved to the US, but it will be coming back up soon. But you can buy it on Amazon, on Target, Barnes and Nobles, on Kindred Stories, on my publisher's website if you're in the UK, Conscious Dream Publishing Bookshop, or you can email me directly or send me a DM on Instagram. And my book Instagram account is @_littlebigstories. That's @_littlebigstories.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, that is great. Thank you so much, Sharnette. Once again, it's been great chatting with you.
Thank you so much for having me. And I'm super excited to learn that Ada means firstborn. I love that. So I'm actually going to target Nigerian bookstores next. I'm going there next.
I'm gonna send you. I'll find, because in the Igbo culture, I'm Edo, but in the Igbo culture, there are names. There's Adora, there's Adeze, Adane, Adama. I will look for them. I'll write them out and I'll email them to you with their meanings. So
that's so precious. Thank you so much.
You're most welcome.